Okay, well, we've got this series going, Heroes and Sheroes of the Faith. You may not know that term, Sheroes, but I don't think Heroes includes everybody, so. And tonight we're going to be looking at Abel, and you'll have your scriptures. I will have posted on the MCCBR web page, Facebook page, and also have on Sunday the questions that go with the next week. So you'll have those to look at ahead of time. But you'll have the scripture so you can be reading it and thinking, what in the world is she going to do with this one now? But I think it's important to know that heroes and sheroes of faith, their stories are not just told in here, and they're not all in here. We have heroes and sheroes of our faith today. So each week I'm going to be telling you a little bit about an MCC person that I think fits the topic and that is one of my heroes or sheroes. And my first one tonight, the lesson tonight is about pleasing God. There's a woman in the LA church, I'm going to read a little bit about her from Nancy's book in a minute, but her name is Reverend Barbara Haynes. She's an older African-American woman, and Nancy's story about her will tell you a little more about her, but if she were here today, you would want to sit beside her, because just sitting beside her gives you a blessing. Let me tell you a little bit about Barbara. Be careful, next time I might be using some of you all. So, the name of this little short piece is You Too, Grandma? I met Barbara Haynes at MCC Los Angeles, Nancy says, when I was a candidate to be their pastor. She was a member of the gospel choir who had a preacher's voice when she spoke or prayed. I really first heard that voice when someone asked me why churches invited guest speakers for spiritual renewals. Why couldn't the preacher just do that? Barbara piped up, you can't always eat your own cooking. I remember turning around to see who that was. Somehow that woman would be important to my life at an MCC. I invited her and a group of people to become deacons. She did that, but that wasn't enough. As the manager of the nighttime maintenance staff at a local college with special manager of the nighttime, she was able in her 60s to complete her degree. She also is the proud mother of Mike Haynes, a National Football League Hall of Famer. She's been with her partner for over 40 years, and that's a whole nother story. When Mike was inducted into the Football Hall of Fame, they said, we want to invite your parents. And he said, well, then you need to invite my moms. And they looked, he said, those two women raised me. What about your dad? I don't even know where he is. I want my moms. And so both moms were there. The story I want to tell you about being pleasing to God and how Barbara strove to do that. She was in her 60s when she went back to college. She did not have a typewriter. She didn't have a word processor. And that was really before computers were well widespread. She would take her church bulletin home every week, multiple pages, and whatever paper she had to write, she would cut out the words from the church bulletin and tape them down. And then she'd go to the post office or the library and make a copy to submit. Now her teacher knew that she would not be dishonest and be copying, but he said, I have to see an original. She said, no, you don't want to see an original. I have to see an original. So the next time she took him in her little paper with all the glued in words, and he was so overwhelmed that he got her a word processor so she would be able to do that. But Barbara is still preaching. Occasionally you can go on to the Founders MCC webpage and hear a sermon. And if you want a sermon, go listen to Barbara. Go listen to Barbara. And there will be others each week I'll tell you about. But tonight we're going to be looking at pleasing God and the story of Abel. Cain and Abel, ring a bell? Let's first look at Hebrews chapter 11. And we'll be using some of Hebrews every week. Hebrews chapter 11, verses 1 to 6. How about somebody read 1, 2, and 3?
Yeah. I will. Now faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. This is what the ancients were commended for. By faith we understand that the universe was formed at God's command, so that what is seen was not made out of what was visible.
Okay, and 4, 5, 6.
By an act of faith, Abel brought a better sacrifice to God than Cain. It was what he believed, not what he brought, that made the difference. That's what God noticed and approved as righteous. After all these centuries, that belief continues to catch our notice. By an act of faith, Enoch skipped death completely. They looked all over and couldn't find him because God had taken him. We know on the basis of reliable testimony that before he was taken, he pleased God. It's impossible to please God apart from faith. And why? Because anyone who wants to approach God must believe both that he exists and that he cares enough to respond to those who seek him.
Amen. Okay, a little bit of two characters there. What observation can you make about the author of Hebrews? Now, we don't know who wrote Hebrews. There's a lot of thought that it was possibly a woman, based on the words that are used throughout, but we don't know who wrote Hebrews. What do you pick up about the person who wrote those first 3 or 4 verses? Can you tell anything about them?
That faith has the utmost value.
Faith has the utmost value for them. Maybe they knew a little bit of Hebrew history, because you'll find as we go through chapter 11, they keep picking up this story and picking up this story. What else?
There's some depth there. I mean, they really thought that through, that first sentence. That faith is the assurance of things hoped for. I mean, that's really picking it apart, really thinking about it.
Do you get the impression the person wants other people to have faith also? I kind of get the idea of telling you this because, you know, Troy often says, I'm fixing to tell you. I think the author of Hebrews says, I'm telling you what faith is like. And what I like about this is it's not just some mind-expanding thought. He gives us, or she, gives us examples over and over of faith. What words stand out to you in the description of faith in verse 1? Let's hear that here it is from the Message. The fundamental fact of existence is that this trust in God, this faith, is the firm foundation under everything that makes life worth living. Or, faith is being sure of what we hope for and certain of what we do not see. What words stand out to you how they describe faith?
Firm foundation.
Firm, I like that. Firm foundation. Firm foundation. What else? What's interesting here, it doesn't really define faith. The writer doesn't say, now here's the definition of faith. It's a noun. It's often used as this and this and this. Instead, it talks about the process that's involved in faith, and the process and what results is faith. Did you hear that? The being sure of what we hope for and certain of what we do not see. Do you hear process in that? It's not just a once and done. Not just once and done. What words would you use to describe the level of your faith right now? There's no boo hiss, there's no right and wrong. Somebody said, tell me one word that describes your faith.
Unending.
Unending?
Stronger.
Stronger?
Growing.
Growing? What else? Trips?
Expansion.
Expansion? Do you hear how those are process words? You may not have thought about that, but faith is not something you gain once and it's over with. You don't get a certificate saying, okay, you have faith, you're done. Because things come along that challenge our faith, right? They do for me at least. So, what are the things you hope for as a follower of Christ? Somewhere along the line, we made the decision to be Christians. We could have been a lot of other things, but we made that decision. Why? Why?
We kept knocking on the door.
Somebody kept knocking on the door? What else? What did you think you'd get out of this? Now that may have changed over the years, but what did you think you'd get out of this God deal?
Blessings.
Blessings?
From God,
Peace?
inner
Inner
peace,
peace?
and to be a better person.
Be a better person?
Everlasting life.
Everlasting life. Too many people decide to follow Jesus for fire insurance. You know what I mean? But they miss out on a lot of what the rest of the point is, where the rest of the point is. Some people become a Christian because they've listened to some TV preachers who tell them that if you send them $10, you'll get $100 back. Not from them, but you'll get $100.
Yeah.
You know? So some people think that there's money and tangible blessings, and sometimes there are. Sometimes there are. But I think it's really important to realize that this writer of Hebrews is telling us we're in this for that growing, expanding, firm foundation of faith. And I like the fact that we used foundation and then growing and expanding. Because if you don't have a foundation, you're not going to be doing much growing. The old song, "The house built on sand, didn't have a firm foundation." What happened to it? It's flat. Okay. What does faith help us grasp about the universe? Now, I thought this one was really, I'd never even thought about this. Verse 3. By faith we understand that the universe was formed at God's command, so that what is seen was not made out of what was visible. Now, we're not going to get into a bunch of creationism discussion and evolution. But what does it tell us about how the universe came to be?
God.
From God. You know, the old egg and chicken. We don't know. We can't, as human beings, I think, comprehend how there was nothing and then there was world. How there was nothing and then there was water. And yet, the writer of Hebrews says that that's one of the ways we have faith that God's at work. Now, if you take it to another level, have you ever wondered if A, B, or C would ever happen in your life, and you pray and you trust God and then it happens? Whether that's a relationship, a job, an understanding, a place to serve in church. So again, sometimes it's out of nothing. God creates something. Faith. Let's go hear about faith from Genesis. Genesis chapter 4, verses 1 through 12. This is probably a story you've heard before. You've probably heard the story of Cain and Abel. There's been a couple books used with that title to talk about family relationships. From the NIV, Adam lay with his wife Eve, and she became pregnant and gave birth to Cain. She said, "With the help of the Lord, I have brought forth a man." Later, she gave birth to his brother Abel. Now Abel kept flocks, and Cain worked the soil. In the course of time, Cain brought some of the fruit of the soil as an offering to the Lord. But Abel brought fat portions from some of the firstborn of his flock. The Lord looked with favor on Abel and his offering. But on Cain and his offering, he did not look with favor. So Cain was very angry, and his face was downcast. The Lord said to Cain, "Why are you angry? Why is your face downcast? If you do what is right, will you not be accepted? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must master it." Now Cain said to his brother Abel, "Let's go out in the field." And while they were in the field, Cain attacked his brother, and Abel killed him. Cain attacked his brother Abel and killed him. Then the Lord said to Cain, "Where is your brother Abel?" "I don't know. Am I my brother's keeper?" The Lord said, "What have you done? Listen, your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. Now you're under a curse and driven from the ground, which opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you work the ground, it will no longer yield its crops for you. You will be a restless wanderer on the earth." And I don't know how much studying you did with this or looking at the questions, but what's your impressions about that story?
I was lost.
Hmm?
I was lost.
You were lost? Okay, hang on. We'll give you a map in a minute.
I'm sure.
What else hit you about this story? Has anybody never ever heard this story before? Okay.
Yeah, of course. I always wondered why he favored one over the other, why God favored one over the other, and was it like saying that the meat was better than the vegetables and fruits? I mean, I couldn't, that was the only part that I couldn't come to grips
See,
with.
I like that interpretation, being a massive carnivore and nowhere near a vegetarian. Just
Yeah, I mean, you see what I'm saying? I
yeah,
mean,
we're going
it's
to talk
like-
about that in a minute, but yeah, it does bring up that question.
Wonder, and not only did, like in the beginning, so it said, like, you don't really know the difference in their ages, so it said that she had Abel first, so does that mean your first son is like the most important, and then later he had Cain, but it didn't say later, like as in years, or later as in could they have been twins? I mean, you just don't know that part. So it is a little bit confusing with this.
It is. Isn't it that way with a lot of Bible stories? You read them and kind of go, huh? Huh?
But does some scriptures say God hated one and loved the other?
That's interpretation of some places. We can get into what hated and loved means.
But this, I was thinking before they were actually born.
Oh, I'm not familiar with that, but I'll look for it. Kind of makes you wonder, have you ever noticed in a family how often the firstborn is treated in certain ways? Not only in better ways, always, but sometimes they come with bigger expectations. You know, the next child, my folks waited 5.5 years to have their next child. I wonder why they waited so long. What do you learn? What do you learn about God's character in these verses? Now, you know there's no right or wrong answers in all this. What hits you about God's character? Rhonda implied it's like maybe there's something unfair. Is that good use?
Yeah, well, I think sometimes in the Old Testament we see versus now, we see God as not so fair, not so just, sometimes angry, sometimes, you know, judgmental. We found, you would see the Old Testament, you'd see more of that fire and brimstone type God than we interpret him as now. You know what I'm saying? After Jesus, it seemed like it changed.
Maybe God, well, of course he was coming, but he knew that Cain did not bring respect.
Get to that. We'll get to that.
You might have brought in some rotten fruit.
We kind of, it sort of gives you a different view of the God we do learn in the New Testament. And this is also among the first things somebody wrote down about God. It was also how they were interpreting God at this time. They didn't have the rest of the book to balance it out with. What do Cain's responses, both to God's rejection of his offering and to God's warning, reveal about Cain? Before we get there, yeah, we don't know what the age difference was or how quickly that happened. And we don't know why Abel kept flocks and Cain was a farmer. We don't know. I've heard all kinds of little stories about why that was. The bottom line is we don't know. But Cain, in the course of time, they brought sacrifices. How did they know to bring sacrifices? Now later on, the Jews get all kinds of laws about how to bring sacrifices, but they brought some kind of offering to God. Okay? And as we said before, Abel brought fat portions from some firstborn of his flock. Choice cuts of meat, the Message Bible says. Okay? And Cain, it says, brought an offering from the produce of his farm. And it implies Cain did it first. Did you catch that? It's recorded that Cain did that first. And God accepted the firstborn flock sacrifice. Why did God accept that? We don't know. We don't know. Again, you can come up with all kinds of things that have been interpreted by it, but we don't know. The trick is how the two responded to God's acceptance or rejection. Notice when you read this carefully, the Lord looked with favor on Abel and his offering, But on Cain and his offering, he did not look with favor. It doesn't even say he totally rejected it, does it? God didn't bring down like in Star Trek and burn it up. He looked with favor on one and not as much so on the other. I say that because we're taught that there's this big delineation between it. That's not where the problem comes up. The problem doesn't come up with God's approval or disapproval. The problem is in the next part of the story. So Cain was very angry, and his face was cast down. The message says he lost his temper and went into a sulk, a pout. Why did he get angry and go into a pout?
Because God didn't approve. God liked the sheep.
Usually if someone is petulant, it is typically a result of knowing that there's something that you should have done, and for whatever reason, 1,000,001 reasons, you didn't follow through with what you know you needed to, and then somebody calls you on it.
Calls you on it, exactly. The problem doesn't start here with the offerings that were brought. I think that probably most people think that both men brought an offering. The words that are used imply that Cain's offering was just something he had around. It doesn't say anything about his prime crops. It doesn't say his first crops. It says he brought some fruits of the soil. But Abel goes another step. He doesn't just pick up some old lamb that's laying there and throw it on the sacrifice. He picked the choicest pieces of his firstborn. I hear a little bit of heart difference there. Let's use an example. Somebody asks you to bring something for potluck, and you really don't want to. So you do what I often do, you go by Kroger on the way in and get something, but you pass it off as your own. And somebody else comes in with a dish they've really worked on, and they really put their heart into it. Now we're going to eat both of them, okay? Be real. We're going to eat both of them. But do you hear the difference in the attitude and the heart intent of what was brought? I take it also back to coming to church. How many times have all of us gotten up and thought, I guess I'll go to church. I don't want to go. I'd rather sleep in. Probably won't be an easy place to park. It might be raining. Okay? Anybody other than me? Okay. And there are other Sundays when you get up and you go, wow, I'm really glad I'm going to get to go to church. You come in church like Rudy. You know, you're all excited. You get to see people. You're happy. Now, we're both going to be in church. We're both going to be here. We're both going to probably, give some offering. We may even sing, except for one person. We may sing, we may enjoy seeing each other. But unless that transformation happened as you got in and got into the flow, somebody's going to go home thinking, well, I wasted that hour. And somebody else is going to go, boy, I wish we could have stayed longer. You hear the difference? I'm using it as an example because it's not just fruit or meat. It's the heart intent there. What do Cain's responses to God's reaction and God's warning reveal about Cain? Kelly already said he evidently was a bit petulant. I love that word. And when God called him on it, his reaction was?
Angry.
After he killed him, my brother's keeper. But first he had to throw a little hissy fit. First he had to throw a temper tantrum. Now, none of us have ever done that with God, right? None of us have ever gotten mad at God. I have. And probably to God it looked like a temper tantrum. My visualization when I'm mad at God is if you had a 3-year-old and they were mad at you, and they're flailing around trying to kick you and hit you, but you've got them out here, and it's not bothering you. You're going to wait till they wear themselves out. And I see God doing that sometimes when I'm pitching a fit. God's going, go ahead. I'll be here when you get finished. Go ahead. Unfortunately, it doesn't stop there with Cain. The sacrifice was better, or question 8. Sacrifice was better, like we've said, because of the heart. Because of the heart. Now, it's really sad how this story continues. Not only is he angry, but God sort of says it's going to get you in more trouble. Again, none of us here have ever had our temper get us in trouble, right? Anybody ever broken something because they were angry? I have. Anybody ever really hurt somebody's feelings because they were angry? But here, God says, this is God talking to him. God didn't just throw him away initially. You've got a master. If you don't do what's right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must master it. We don't know how much time passed between that little exchange with God and the next action. My guess is Cain probably didn't mull it over a lot. Because usually when we're angry, we just act. Just act. That's why they invented something called timeout that more adults need. And he says to Abel, he didn't say, let's go for a walk, let's go visit mom and dad. He says, let's go out in the field. And while they were in the field, now we don't know if that's a vegetable field or an animal field. While he went out in the field, Cain attacked his brother and killed him. Well, that should have been the end of the story, shouldn't it? Now God's only going to get the sacrifice of the vegetables. We'll show you, God. Verse 6 sets the tone for every example of faith that we'll explore in this passage. Why are you angry? Why is your face downcast? Where is your faith? Again, I really keep wanting to hit on this because it really hit me in this lesson. God didn't immediately send Cain out into the wilderness. He just had a little talk with him. He just warned him where his temper was going to get him in trouble. So then God comes to Cain. Where's your brother? Where's your brother Abel? He doesn't say, where's your brother Abel that pleased me and brought the right kind of sacrifice? Do you hear that in there? No, it says, where's your brother? And that famous line, I don't know. Am I my brother's keeper? Notice he doesn't say, I killed him, that's why he's not here. Again, modern day application, how often do we try not to tell God what God might already know? Am I just talking to myself tonight? You know. Am I my brother's keeper? And God says, what have you done? What have you done? What have you done? Wouldn't you have loved to have seen Cain's face at that point? I mean, this wasn't Adam. This wasn't Eve asking. We don't know what their response was. They're not even in the story. Typical mom and dad off somewhere else. But it's God asking him. And then he says, your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. God says, I know what you did. I know what you did. I know what you did. And then he finishes up what the consequences are, because there's always consequences. There's always consequences. And it puts a curse on him and sends him out. No, now he's not going to get to be a vegetable farmer anymore. Now he's just going to wander around. Just wander around. Now, it's a good thing that Adam and Eve had more sons and daughters. Because otherwise, somebody had to keep the farming going, somebody had to keep the animals going. But that initial setup, the way God intended it to be, got messed up. Got messed up. Do you ever wonder if Abel knew what was happening? Did he think maybe his brother just wanted to spend some time with him? I doubt that Abel went back and went with a big stick and said, let's go for a walk, little brother. You know? Why does faith please God? Apart from the story per se, why does faith please God?
Shows you believe in him. You believe in him. Shows you believe in him.
Shows belief in God, trust in God. What else? Somebody has faith in you. How does that make you feel? Somebody says, I need you to do thus and such, and I know you can do it, and I know you will. How does that make you feel? Feel good. Feel like somebody recognizes. And I have this kind of weird perception of God because I think sometimes God has feelings. And I think some things make God's heart smile. And I think other things irritate the living daylights out of God. But faith, the point of faith in this story was that Cain didn't trust God. Cain didn't have faith in God. He wasn't willing to try to see how he could please God. He was going to do it his way. So then the questions get down to that part we don't always like, question 10. Faith also, another thing I read, faith is coming to God with empty hands, ready to receive whatever God gives us. Too often we come to God with our list. Okay, I want this and this and this and this, and I want it in this order and put it here. Real faith is saying, I'm yours, God. What is that Kirk Franklin song, My Life is in Your Hands? And realizing that faith is a step-by-step process. If you've ever really been upset with God, disappointed in God, maybe you still are, you don't just instantly turn into Susie Sunshine and think everything's great and wonderful. In my experience, it takes rebuilding that trust. Rebuilding that trust. And the good thing is, again, God's the strong one here, letting me kick my anger out. It's still going to be there. In what area of your life is it easier for you to take on Cain's attitude toward God or others? What's Cain's attitude? Pissy. I feel pissy. What else?
Everything was about him.
Everything's about him. Has to be his way, done his way. Angry. Knows better than God knows. Surely we've never had that thought.
Thinks he does.
Thinks he does. Thinks he does. So the question is, are there areas in your life and my life that it's easier to take on Cain's attitude toward God and others? Can you think of an area where you, in the past, because we're all wonderful people right now, can you think of a time in the past where maybe you had a Cain's attitude toward somebody or something?
Maybe not that severe, but when you go, I think for me, the time that I struggled with some faith or being upset with God is when I have continuous health issues and they don't get better and you don't get help for them and you think, you pray about it a lot. Before I never prayed for myself, I'd always pray for everybody else, and then somebody's like, why don't you pray for yourself? And then you do that, and you don't see many results. I see it in other parts of my life, because I could take the smallest little seed and think of it as a blessing that I always get through. I'm always able to pay my salon rent, even if I get stressed out and think I can, or something always comes through. But the health part, I still struggle with the fact of that I pray about it and I don't get relief. So that would probably be the most, but not as strong an anger as he had.
Good, because that'll get you in trouble.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that is ongoing health issues, ongoing financial issues. I know some of us have had times when, you really didn't know where the rent was going to come from or where the next tank of gas was going to come from. And it's amazing because I don't think anybody in here tonight is homeless. And most of us drove a vehicle to get here. So the gas came from somewhere. What practices can help you walk in Abel's way to please God in your life? What did Abel do that was so pleasing?
He trusted.
He trusted. What else?
He just did the right thing.
How did he know it was the right thing? He hadn't read this chapter yet.
He may have felt it in his heart, or maybe he had learned something, maybe a combination.
Faith.
Faith. I believe that Abel brought the best Abel could bring. Keep going back to that. I mean, I don't know what the vegetables look like, but he came with the firstborn, the choice cuts, the prime rib. Okay? Now the question is, what practices could help us walk like Abel to please God in our lives? Some of that's to think about, and some of that's to come to the top of your mind.
You always bring your best to God, and even if you're thinking in the back of your, because I still do it, you know, with just for example, you know, giving financially to the church. You know, there are some weeks where we've got a couple of bucks, and I'm thinking we could really use that because we're riding on fumes going home to Salem, you know, and you know you're faced with a choice. You know, do we give everything that we've got to God and trust God to take care of us, or do we try to take care of ourselves? And what we have learned over the past several years is that if you give what you've got to God, God's going to take care of the rest. And it's happened time and time again. And even now, there's still that little nag in the back of your head going, are you sure? Are you sure you want to do this? But if you just bite the bullet and you follow through and you do it, God takes care of you.
And sometimes it may be giving those last couple bucks. Sometimes it may be deciding that this is what God's led me to give. And it may be all or it may be a part. But the trick is, the point is, what God lays on our heart to give or to do or to share, that's what pleases God. Not what somebody else thinks. Not what somebody else, you know, I often wonder, I've never been an usher, I don't want to be an usher. But I've wondered if when you're passing the plate, if you ever look at the plate, don't tell me if you do, I don't know. But you know, it would be so tempting to look, see what somebody put in the plate. Now somebody could put a $50 bill in there, and you think, oh wow. Well, they may have a checking account that has 5 digits in it, not counting after the decimal, you know. There may be somebody else that tosses $1 in, and that may be what they have for the rest of the week.
Or there could be somebody that puts a whole bunch of coins in a big envelope, and then when the person that's collecting the offering, the plate dips down, they might not be able to avoid looking at that.
that would really make you wonder there, yeah. But again, the problem with Cain and Abel around faith was Cain didn't have faith that what he brought to God was good enough, and therefore he got his feelings hurt, and he got angry, and he lashed out. Abel, however he knew to do it, brought the best, not better than Cain's, but the best that he had. The best that he had. Now, the next thing you're going to come up with, yeah, look what happened to him. Look what happened to him. The point of the story is not who lived and who died, but who had a quote-unquote victorious life. I believe that way before Jesus, when Abel died, Abel went to be with the presence of God. Cain may or may not have later on, but during his earthly existence, he just kind of wandered around. Okay, this is really off topic, but if he's wandering around, who's he running into? If there's just Cain and Abel. Anyhow, think about that later. So, the point of faith is pleasing God. Who can tell me if I'm pleasing God or not? Who can tell me if my faith is strong enough and I'm pleasing God?
Nobody.
Actually, nobody. You may want to, you may think you can, you may want to do that. And I can't do that with you all. Now, sometimes I'll see the fruit, if you will, not like in Cain, but I'll see you being at peace. I'll see you moving ahead in your life. I'll see you trusting God more, taking that next step. But even that, I can't know your total motives. So it goes back again to be between us, individually, and God. Faith. Next week, the faith is making difficult choices. Making difficult choices. And we're going to be talking about Noah and some in the book of Hebrews. I want you to be thinking this week about the most difficult choice you've ever had to make. Big or small, big or small. Difficult choice you've had to make. Any last minute prayer requests or praises?
I do a wide range of like for Indonesia and for actually the United States right now because it's just scandal after scandal after scandal going on right now, and we need Jesus right now. We need some Jesus in this.
And for the people in Indonesia, she mentioned, where there was the earthquake and we call it tsunami. Yeah, those kind of things. We have it so easy sometimes, folks. Kathy?
Prayers for people who are having a lot of memories brought up because of all the talk now about sexual assault and related items. There are a lot of people really, things are coming up for them.
The abuse hotlines have increased sometimes by 200%. People calling, and that's the people who call in and ask for help.
Right.
You know there's so many more, so many more.
And I'm thankful I got a time to get away. I gave myself a timeout. It was perfect. Nobody's gonna get hurt now. It was a little testy there before.
Bet most
I was
happy.
acting a little bit like Cain, you know, getting a little pissy.
Would you pray with me? Loving God, we thank you for examples of faith like my sister Barbara Haynes. We thank you for examples of faith, the positive and the negative examples like Cain and Abel. Give us the courage this week as choices come up to choose to follow you, to choose to let you lead, guide, and direct. Thank you for those folks who come out to study. Help us to open your word more and more so that we learn more and more about you. In your name we pray.